So this tells you just how bad it's gotten in Jackson County and Kansas City when it comes to folks breaking in to restaurants, breaking into bars, breaking into cars at 12, 1, 2, 3, 4 in the morning. 78-year-old dudes are now emboldened to get in there, start breaking windows, trying to rob Betty Ray's ice cream shop, or I should say robbing Betty Ray's ice cream shop, but thankfully getting caught. Man, oh man, what a mess. So yesterday, right after I got off the air, I guess it was about 11 o'clock, I started hearing about multiple other break-ins that took place Thursday morning in River Market, which I'll get to here in a second. But we now know that prosecutors have charged a 78-year-old Independence man in the Betty Ray's break-in, the most recent Betty Ray's break-in, at the ice cream shop's River Market location. John Heckman of Independence is charged with second-degree burglary, stealing, and property damage. A court record alleges Heckman broke into Betty Ray's River Market location on Sunday. Surveillance video from inside the business shows a man, later identified by police as Heckman, throwing a rock through a window. He then walks inside and carries out a safe. Documents show police also found surveillance video that showed Heckman loading the stolen safe into a dark blue Subaru. Officers used the vehicle's license plate and Heckman's tattoos to identify him, according to the court document. He was arrested at a residence in Kansas City, Kansas, and court records show Heckman told police officers he used the stolen money on dope and then went to the casinos and used more of it there. He has a lengthy criminal record and has been convicted at least twice of burglary. So this guy is your run-of-the-mill criminal who hopefully now is going to pay a serious legal price for his most recent law-breaking moment. But I couldn't help but think about how this plays out in a county and in a city where the prosecutor, as we well know, has done a terrible job keeping criminals in check. She can try to fudge the numbers. She can try to go to friendly media and say, oh, no, I only get so many cases on my desk. I just go after the cases that show up here. She can try to do that, but the average citizen in Kansas City no longer buys it, and nor should they. And I'm glad they caught this guy, by the way. We all should be glad when criminals are caught in Kansas City. But I couldn't help but chuckle to myself when I see we now have 78-year-olds. 78! I mean, that's Donald Trump's age. Guy's pushing 80 years old. He's throwing rocks through windows, and he's robbing ice cream shops in Kansas City. You know that you have lost all respect as a prosecutor when 78-year-old dudes are breaking into ice cream shops. My goodness.
Representing the seniors division.
So here was KCTV5's package on the Betty Ray's break-in. They did talk to the owner, Matt Chateau, who we had on the show a couple of days ago. I guess that would have been Monday, right after the break-in happened on Sunday. KCTV5 caught up with him yesterday, and here's how it went.
Having a presence in the community in the times in which crime takes place is the biggest and best deterrent that you can have.
Chateau says he doesn't believe the new damage reimbursement is enough to protect local businesses.
That gives me some sort of grant money from the lonely taxpayer that has to fund the cost of a perpetrator that's never going to get caught.
And if a new plan isn't put forth, he says he might have to reconsider leaving.
There's a limit to what we can do. I can put bars on the front of that window. I can put drop-down, roll-down metal gates in front of our doors when we close, but then we become a downtown L.A.
And that's the question for every business owner right now who's just trying to get by and make a decent, honest living in places like River Market, downtown Westport. I know it's not easy at all. I mean, it's just not, especially if you only have one business to pick up and move or to pick up and leave. But I genuinely do wonder that as these issues continue to spiral in parts of town where you typically haven't had a lot of crime, when some people throw their hands up and say enough's enough. And what you had on Thursday morning, so yesterday, but the news broke around lunchtime yesterday, There will several other businesses, at least 5 more businesses broken into overnight in the River Market neighborhood. Police said that just after 4 a.m., patrol officers went on an alarm call in the 400 block of Walnut Street. They found the business that had been broken into. A short time later, officers found another business broken into, 100 block of East 5th Street. Turned out there were 5 businesses that were broken into yesterday morning, and this comes just days after Betty Ray's deals with its second break-in over the last 3 weeks. So I talked to some people down there, and I said, what gives? I mean, when are you guys going to stand up and start being vocal about this? You have one person doing it, Matt Chateau, but when are the rest of you going to stand up? And they're doing the same nonsense that every other business community and neighborhood community that deals with this, same thing. They all say, well, we don't want to bring too much attention to it because it's a double-edged sword. We bring attention to it, we potentially drive people away. And then also if we say something, we're kind of afraid of retribution. You've got to stop. You have to stop. Living in fear of politicians who are supposed to be looking out for you, living in fear of criminals and the media reporting on the criminals in your backyard, you are simply trying to die by 1,000 cuts. That's what you're signing up for.
Right. That ship's already left the barn, right? That horse has already sailed.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I like what you did there, John. You combine the two and put them backwards. But that's what you have to look at this as. If you're a business owner, you have to say, I get it. I don't want to hurt myself in the short term, but I'm killing myself in the long term. It's only a matter of when. It's not a matter of if, right? It is going to take years for this police department to recruit and get 300 officers sworn in. You think that's happening next year, 2 years, 3 years down the road? It's not. The summer of love in 2020 set policing back in this country potentially decades. Between the way cops were treated, between the way the media treated police, then you combine the fact that a lot of veterans said, I'm done, I'm retiring early, or I'm retiring as soon as I can, younger people not getting into the business, and then trying to recruit to urban departments is nearly impossible right now. It is a fool's errand to believe that Kansas City is going to simply turn this thing around this year, next year, or the year after that. God willing, it'll get better. I mean, the homicide numbers have trended down a bit, which is great news, but the non-fatal shootings are up almost 20%. So all that tells me is people are missing. Their aim's not as good. They got to get glasses on the criminals. That's all it tells me. So this is not improving in the immediate future, which means if you're a business owner, you have to decide what you're going to do. Are you going to continue to whistle past the graveyard and hope that you're not next? And basically close your door every night, try to figure out what to do with the cash, and pray that you don't get hit when you wake up the next morning? Or are you going to stand up? All right? Are you going to stand up to some of the cowards and the criminals and the politicians and the media and say enough's enough and here's what we need? There's a couple of folks who are doing it. Obviously, Matt Chateau is one of them, and good on him. I've got some other people I'm set to talk to here in the next couple of days that I'm hopeful will also be a part of that change that this city desperately needs. But if it doesn't happen soon, this stuff is not going to get better. Because everything that's being discussed right now from the city level, whether it's paying for security cameras for people who have been broken into or whatever it might be, that is all reactionary. And that is not going to get the job done. Happy Friday morning. It's a red Friday. Didn't have one of those last week, so boys are back in red. Mark's decked out as always. Kendall Gammon will be here to get you set for the Niners game coming up at 7:05. Next on KCMO, do you see we've got lip readers? Lip readers have done a little digging into what Barack Obama said to Joe Biden in the last couple of days. What did those expert lip readers come to the conclusion on? We'll tell you next. You got to love the lip readers at 6:20 on a Friday. Thanks for joining us on 95.7 FM KCMO. And Joe Biden and Barack Obama were visiting earlier in the week. And they were seen on camera having a very serious conversation. And this happened on Wednesday afternoon. They were at the funeral of Ethel Kennedy. I guess it was technically a memorial service. And it was in Washington, D.C. And you can see Barack Obama is standing there with his arms folded and Joe Biden, looking befuddled as he has for the last several years, is talking into Obama's right ear. So Biden has that classic Joe Biden befuddled look on his face. Obama's kind of hunched over, arms crossed, and there's clearly a very serious conversation going on between the two guys. And lip readers, a professional lip reader, did their best to decipher the conversation and shared it with the New York Post. So here is what the translation led to. There's no point in me playing any audio here because it's just memorial service music with these two guys standing there. I believe I put the video up on my X page at Pete Mundo. You can see it there if you want from yesterday. I believe we had that up. So if you want to see it there, if not, you can find it anywhere on the internet. But it's a very serious-looking Obama, a very concerned and befuddled-looking Joe Biden. And according to the professional lip reader who talked to the Washington Post, Joe Biden says to Barack Obama, "She's not as strong as me." Who is she? Well, that would be Kamala Harris. Then you see Barack Obama say, according to the lip reader, "I know. That's true," adding, quote, "We have time." Biden responds, quote, "Yeah, we'll get it in time." Moments earlier, Obama had said, per the lip reader, "It's important that we have some time together," in a possible reference to campaigning alongside Kamala Harris. Now, this dialogue was translated for the New York Post by Jeremy Freeman, London-based forensic lip reader who was born deaf and for 16 years has served as a University College London certified expert witness for litigants, the police and journalists say. Although Harris's name was not included in Freeman's transcription, it's unclear to whom else the conversation could have pertained. Freeman described the conversation as very supportive and said he detected no tension between Obama and Biden, as had been speculated in viral commentary due to Obama shaking his head at one point. Democratic sources were divided when asked about the translation, with some saying they believe it was an honest take on the state of the 2024 race, and others expressing such strong disbelief that they questioned the accuracy of the script. Well, you'd be insane to question the accuracy of the script. You can see it. While the body language is not tense, it's not jovial. Now, I know they're at a memorial service, but still, whatever's being said is clearly serious business. And right now, with just over 2 weeks ago, and really there are 2 weeks left to campaign, right? By the time you get to Friday, Saturday before Election Day, there's not a lot to do. At that point, you're basically just kind of crossing your T's and dotting your I's. You're not swaying a lot of votes in the last couple of days. So you've got 2 weeks from tomorrow, let's say, that's the Saturday before the election, to do all the campaigning you want to do. Early voting's been going on for weeks in some cases, which is crazy. It starts tomorrow in the state of Kansas, so get out there and vote early. And it starts, next week in Missouri, I believe it is. So all this stuff's going to be happening real soon. But what's amazing is that Obama has been awfully quiet. If Obama is saying to Joe Biden, hey, we got to get out there, we got to get some time together, well, these guys are not sticking their neck out for Kamala Harris. It's not just what you do, it's what you don't do. And Obama has not been hustling from corner to corner in swing states all over the country on behalf of Kamala Harris. He's just not doing it. And that suggests to me he does not want to be a part of another loser. He was obviously there side by side with Hillary Clinton back in 2016. He, of course, mocked Donald Trump on Saturday Night Live, saying that you are never going to be president. And then Donald Trump became president. He got Biden across the finish line. He had a pandemic to help him, but he got Biden across the finish line. And now he's got to try to drag Kamala Harris across the finish line. Who wants to be tasked with doing that? So I believe Obama's going to show up at some point these next couple of weeks somewhere, but it's going to be a very tepid response and endorsement of Kamala Harris. He's posted a lot of things on social media, which is great, but you're just kind of feeding into the same old crowd on X, on Instagram. You're not really reaching the people that apparently you got to reach to get this candidate to a victory. So he's doing all the pleasantries. He's being nice enough, but he's not really digging in and working hard for Kamala Harris. And I believe that's because he knows deep down there's no point. I'm not sitting here getting cocky. I'm not getting overconfident. We should have all learned our lesson from the big red wave of 2022 that never transpired. That it would be foolish to sit here and think that anything is a slam dunk right now. But the polling obviously is moving in Donald Trump's favor. The poly markets, which are the betting markets, obviously they're all offshore. You can't bet on the election here in the country. But the offshore betting markets are giving Donald Trump now a 62% chance of winning this election. And that has flipped in the last few weeks. He was underwater. He had like a 40% chance per the betting markets a couple of weeks back, or a few weeks back. And now he's right at about 60%. So that goes to show you how quickly things are moving. And the last few days, they have moved tremendously. He was at 56% back on October the 10th. 8 days later, he's over 60%. So everything keeps moving in Donald Trump's favor after he was trailing Kamala Harris in the poly markets, which is, once again, you can Google it. It's an online betting market that basically handicaps elections, presidential races here in the U.S. It has moved in a big way in Donald Trump's favor in just the last week. And the Democrats aren't foolish. It's why Kamala Harris went on Fox News the other day. She did not go on Fox News because she suddenly thought she needed to try to swing Fox News voters onto her side of the aisle. She knew that she was going to get a line of questions that were going to be much more difficult than anything she had gotten anywhere else. 60 Minutes did an okay job, but she knew that she was going to get a lot more than she got anywhere else. And she's not doing it because she thinks she's in a great spot going into November 5. There is no way. Happy Friday. Last night, the Al Smith dinner was taking place. And typically, you'll have both presidential candidates go to this big event raising money for Catholic charities. Big Catholic event there in New York City. Obviously, a big voting bloc as well in this country. So Trump shows up. Kamala Harris does not. Why? I don't know. It's easy. Kamala Harris knows how to read off a script. That's about all she's good at. She can show up, tell a couple of jokes, some at her own expense, show a little self-deprecation, make fun of Donald Trump, and this should be very easy stuff to do. She elects not to do it. Instead, she submits a video, and it is 3 minutes of all-time cringe. I have the video here. I don't want to make you this uncomfortable on a Friday, but I have no choice. The news cycle demands I do this. Okay? So I apologize ahead of time. We're all clear? We all good? All right. So you're going to hear the entire 3-minute video, and then you're going to hear Jim Gaffigan, who was emceeing the event last night. And he's no fan of Trump, but even he knew this thing didn't hit. And I'm going to set it up just so you know what's going on here. Kamala Harris is pretending to deliver a speech to the Al Smith dinner. And then she gets interrupted, air quotes, by a super fan who also happens to be Catholic. And this is how this awkward exchange unfolds in this video that Kamala Harris shared with the Al Smith dinner folks last night via video.
Your Eminence and distinguished guests, the Al Smith dinner provides a rare opportunity to set aside partisanship.
Cool. Oh, sorry.
Hey, what's going on? Who was that?
Oh, sorry, Mary Catherine Elliott. Mary Catherine Elliott. It's so nice to meet you.
Very nice to meet you, Mary Catherine. Right now I'm trying to record my speech for tonight's dinner.
Oh, yeah, I know. I just want to say that I'm Catholic, and tonight is one of the biggest dinners next to the Last Supper.
It is a very important dinner, and it's an important tradition that I'm so proud to be a part of.
Sometimes when I get nervous, I stick my fingers under my arms and I simmer them like that. But that's gross.
So tell me something. I'm giving a speech. Do you have some thoughts about what I might say tonight?
My feelings about what you should say tonight would be best expressed in a monologue from one of my favorite made-for-TV series.
Okay, let's hear it.
Don't you see, man? We need a woman to represent us. A woman brings more heart, more compassion. And think how smart she must be to become a top contender in a field dominated by men. It's time for a woman, bro. And with this woman, we can fly.
Oh, my gosh.
What series was that from?
Oh, that's from House of Dragons, now streaming on HBO Max.
Is there anything that you think that maybe I shouldn't bring up tonight?
Well, don't lie. Thou shalt not bear false witness to thy neighbor.
Indeed, especially thy neighbor's election results.
Just so you know, there will be a fact checker there tonight.
Oh, that's great. Who?
Jesus. And maybe don't say anything negative about Catholics.
I would never do that, no matter where I was. That would be like criticizing Detroit in Detroit.
Oh,
Does
got
it
him.
bother you that Trump guy insults you all the time? Because it really bothers my friends and me.
Oh, Mary Catherine, it's very important to always remember you should never let anyone tell you who you are. You tell them who you are.
Haters gonna hate, hate, hate. Shake it off.
Shake it off.
Shake it off.
Shake it off.
It's so
Good for you,
painful.
Mary Catherine.
Oh, yeah, okay. And also remember one more thing. Don't worry if you make a mistake, 'cause Catholic people are very forgiving. Yeah, and also, one last thing I want to tell you, don't forget to say, superstar!
Thank you, Mary Catherine.
Thank you, Mamala.
Thank you.
Oh, my goodness.
Your Eminence and distinguished guests, the Al Smith Dinner provides a rare opportunity to set aside partisanship and come together to do some good by supporting the tremendous charitable work of the Catholic Church. The Church cares for the sick and feeds the hungry, supports families with housing and education, and in times of disaster provides not only essential supplies, but also, and so importantly, a sense of hope. The Gospel of Luke tells us that faith has the power to shine a light on those living in darkness and to guide our feet in the path of peace. In the spirit of tonight's dinner, let us recommit to reaching across divides to seek understanding and common ground. And in honor of the great Al Smith, let us fight to build a better future with faith in God, our country, and in each other. Thank you. May God bless you, and may God bless the United States of America.
Oh, here's Jim Gaffigan, by the way, getting to the mic after the video last night. Al Smith Dinner. Here we go.
I don't even know what that noise you're making is. I don't know. As I watched that, I couldn't help but think of, now I know how my kids felt when I FaceTimed into a piano recital they were at.
Oh, my gosh. That was so cringe. Have you heard anything more cringe than that in your life? Who thought that was a good idea? And I will note, by the way, the last Democrat to skip Al Smith's dinner lost 49 states. That would be Walter Mondale in 1984. I don't think that's going to happen here in a couple of weeks, but I just did want to note that, John Anthony.
Because the name is somewhat common, I had to Google it. Al Smith is a former New York governor, right?
Yep.
And the Democratic presidential nominee, or candidate anyway, back in the 20s, I guess. Okay. So I was unclear even who the guy is, or if it was relative to him being Catholic, or what the association was with his name.
Yeah, well, it's a huge dinner. Every presidential candidate and nominee goes. I mean, it's as big a deal as anything. So it's a huge deal. And when you hear Kamala Harris put in a video like that, it just makes your skin crawl. I don't know how you can watch that or listen to that, as you may have just heard for the first time, and think that there is any joy, any funny, anything that is all that relatable in this candidate and in this campaign. Say what you want about Donald Trump, right? And don't get me wrong, the guy can be a loose cannon sometimes, and he can absolutely be his own worst enemy. But he knows how to relate, and he owned that stage last night in a way that is indisputable. He had the jokes, he had the wit, he had the humor, and he had stuff like this.
I'd like to thank our MC this evening, Jim Gaffigan. Most recently, Jim has been playing Tim Waltz on Saturday Night Live. And that'll be a very short gig, I hope, Jim. But it was fun while it lasted, wasn't it? Let's see how that lasts. It better be quick. We don't want him, and I'm not going to say anymore. But unfortunately, Governor Walz isn't here himself, but don't worry, he'll say that he was. He's going to say he was.
Tiananmen Square Tim, there he is. Oh, yeah, I was at the Al Smith dinner. There you go.
There's a group called White Dudes for Harris. Have you seen this? White Dudes for Harris. Anybody know? Are some of you here? White Dudes for Harris? Doesn't sound like it. But I'm not worried about them at all because their wives and their wives' lovers are all voting for me. Every one of those people is voting.
There you go. Donald Trump last night at the Al Smith dinner. Big dinner that happens every year in New York City. Raising money for Catholic charities. It's always a chance for presidential candidates or presidents themselves to go. It's been going on for decades now at this point, and it's a big deal. It's a bipartisan event. It's meant to be filled with laughs, have some humor, some self-deprecating moments, and Donald Trump was there last night. And I don't care if you're voting for Kamala Harris. You have to admit that Donald Trump owned that stage, in part because Kamala Harris elected not to show up. And the last person who did not show up to the Al Smith dinner who was running for president was Walter Mondale, and we know how that went with Ronald Reagan winning 49 out of 50 states in 1984. I won't predict that. I'm just going to throw it out there. But humor is so addictive. Humor is arguably the most underappreciated quality and trait in all of society. We look for people who are obviously very bright. We want them to be competent. We want them to be good at their jobs. But there is nothing like humor to disarm people. There's nothing like humor, especially in today's environment, that makes you likable, that makes you relatable, that makes you somebody that people want to spend time with, that endears you to others. That's what humor does. And I know that some people are inherently funny and some people aren't. You can get funnier. I do believe that's possible. The more you live, the more you talk to people, the more experiences you have in life, you can get funnier. I don't think it's impossible to not get funnier. But some people are obviously inherently funny and some people just aren't. Well, for Donald Trump, who it's never been a question about the policies for many Americans. If this was truly a policy election, Donald Trump would win 40-plus states. The biggest thing that hurts Donald Trump is, well, Donald Trump. So for him to show up last night and deliver some of these lines that obviously he didn't necessarily write, but he's got great writers behind him. And for Kamala Harris to not be there, when her whole pitch is Orange man bad, Donald Trump, Donald Trump, Donald Trump, Donald Trump. Donald Trump's going to, become a dictator and do all these crazy things. For him to show up last night in front of a very large Catholic audience, and it's not just the people in attendance. There are millions of people that end up watching this event, obviously many of them being Catholic, which is a key vote in the country and a key vote in many swing states like Pennsylvania and Michigan and Wisconsin. For him to show up, turn a few jokes, and even do some jokes at his own expense. In an election that may be closer than it probably should be, that makes a difference. And it comes on the heels of Kamala Harris's sit down with Bret Baier when there was nothing likable about that interview. Even if you vote for Kamala Harris, you can't say that she came off likable in that moment. There was nothing likable about her in that moment with Bret Baier. Likable would have been turning a phrase, having a smile on her face, and saying, Brett, I know what you're going for there, but blah, 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 blah. Filibuster, 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 filibuster. She was getting combative. And maybe that's what a percentage of her base wants, but that's certainly not what a lot of people who might consider voting for her are looking for in their candidate, especially when that very same candidate was promoting joys and feels up until like 3 weeks ago, when things started going off the rails a little bit for him. And Donald Trump last night was even able to joke at his own expense about nearly getting killed twice in the last couple of months.
Tradition holds that I'm supposed to tell a few self-deprecating jokes this evening. So here it goes. Nope, I've got nothing. I've got nothing. There's nothing to say. I guess I just don't see the point of taking shots at myself when other people have been shooting at me for a hell of a long time, and they shoot.
I mean, the guy came within a quarter inch of losing his life. And he gets up there in front of hundreds of people and makes a joke about it. You might think that that's easy to do or obvious to do, but a lot of people are not going to do that. A lot of people are not going to be willing to go there. And Donald Trump did in that moment. If you watched it last night, it was about 25 minutes, and I was bouncing back and forth between that and watching my Mets get blown out again for a second straight game. So I kind of started to have a little more attention as I was watching it on my phone of some of these moments from Donald Trump at the Al Smith dinner. And he just came off like the guy who was in charge. And there was actually a moment that got caught on camera where Donald Trump is talking to Chuck Schumer. They're sitting 2 seats away from each other, and the person between them is not sitting down. So Trump and Schumer are talking to each other. And I put this video up on X, on my X, at Pete Mundo. You can see it there. And what you'll notice is that they're actually being cordial. It's almost like Chuck Schumer's not talking to Donald Trump like he's a wannabe dictator and a massive threat to democracy. He's just talking to the guy who has, right now, a better than 50-50 shot based on the odds of being once again the next president of the United States. And it was actually nice to see. It was normal to see. It was normal to see Chuck Schumer talking to Donald Trump, and it looked like it was fairly cordial. In fact, you'll see during the video, twice, Trump slapped Schumer on the shoulder. Now, I think that's part of Trump's alpha male approach, where it does kind of show that you're in charge. But twice, you'll see that he slaps Chuck Schumer on the shoulder. So clearly, whatever was being talked about was cordial enough that Trump felt the need or felt the ability to tap him on the shoulder and say, all right, thanks, talk to you later. And still, he gets up there and he takes a hysterical dig at Chuck Schumer in one of the great all-time lines of the night.
Coming and very, very strong a certain way. I won't tell you what way that is, but Chuck Schumer is here looking very glum. Doesn't he look glum? It looks glum. But look on the bright side, Chuck, considering how woke your party has become. If Kamala loses, you still have a chance to become the first woman president.
I mean, the crowd is eating it up. Absolutely eating it up.
He did kind of turn it into a roast.
Oh, man, he did turn it into a bit of a roast. You're right about that. But it was, like, funny. There were moments of self-deprecation, and there were some outstanding lines in there. Even Brian Stelter of CNN was asked about it last night on the panel, and the human showed himself said this.
Brian Stelter, what did you make of this performance?
Oh, no, don't ask me first. I thought he was funny. I thought he actually got a few great jokes in. I thought the best moment was we talked about the assassination attempts and made light of what he's experienced, because I think he's experiencing real trauma, real PTSD as a result of the shootings, but he's still able to have a light moment in this room. And he took advantage of the fact that Kamala Harris wasn't there.
Which is really the subtext of this whole thing.
Exactly. That she didn't.
They're usually supposed to be in the same room.
That is Brian Stelter, who is, trust me, no fan of Donald Trump. He wants no part of Trump back in the White House. But when he gets on that CNN panel last night and he says, you know, that was pretty funny. He did a good job. He had some great moments. They're acquiescing to, I believe, the reality of where this thing is headed in 2+ weeks, because now you're going on a 4th straight week. That if you just analyze this like a sporting event, who's had the better week by week by week by week, it's the 4th straight week of Donald Trump having a far superior week to Kamala Harris. And I'll explain why on the week by week by week by week. I think that's 4, right? The 4 straight week basis coming up, and get to you at 913-408-7957 on the importance of humor in this moment in American history. We desperately want it. We need it. We want to laugh. We want to smile. And there was only one candidate who gave you the ability to do that last night. And it was Donald Trump. Pete Mundo on KCMO. So you stack up the last 4 weeks. We're sitting here on a Friday. There's really 2 weeks to go until we get to November 5. And last night was the bow on another good week. If you are trending and just looking at these two candidates and these two campaigns, who would you want to be right now closing strong? Well, you'd rather be the Donald Trump campaign. It's not even close. We know there are things that may benefit Kamala Harris. Likely voters and people who show up to every polling election cycle are more likely to maybe vote for her. There's a low propensity voter who is more likely to vote for Donald Trump. Polling suggests that things are trending in Trump's favor, but it's still going to be a pretty darn close election. Neither side should be overly confident right now. But looking from afar, you would have to say to yourself, with the last 4 weeks, I know which candidate and which campaign I'd want to be a part of when it comes to simply winning, and that's Donald Trump's. Because this capped off a 4th straight week where Trump has won the news cycle. Now, this is not just me saying this because maybe I want it to be true. It's undeniable based on what's happened the last 4 weeks in this country. 6 weeks ago was a different story. Presidential debate week, that was a great week for Kamala Harris. The polling had her up in early mid-September. She did a better job in that debate. And I said as much on this show. I'm not finding excuses for the person I prefer. When they have a bad week, they have a bad week. When they have a bad moment, they have a bad moment. But that has not been the case the last 4 weeks. You stack up the last 4, and what you go back to where it all started and when it all began was the week of September 23rd. That week is when you had the hurricanes, Helene, start coming through Florida. Of course, Milton was last week, but that week, September 23rd, is when Helene came through the Florida Panhandle and then ended up hitting the Carolinas very hard, Georgia, and many other parts of these mountain communities up in that part of America. And that was bungled from the get-go. Joe Biden sitting on the beach. Kamala Harris had a big fundraiser in California, and it was not well handled by the administration. That leads in to then people in charge, like Mayorkas, being like, oh, we have no money. There's no money with FEMA. We got to bring everybody back to spend more money to get money to these folks in the mountains of North Carolina to help them out. We don't have any money. What do we do? It was a PR nightmare for them. That led into the week of September 30th. What happened that week? Well, the big thing that week was Tuesday night, a vice presidential debate when J.D. Vance cleaned the clock of Tim Walz. And it wasn't close. And it's because J.D. Vance did a lot of what we just talked about. Not saying he was telling jokes up there, but J.D. Vance was not the guy that many in media portrayed him out to be. In fact, he was empathetic, almost sympathetic towards Tim Walz at times. He had a smile on his face, and he made succinct cases for Donald Trump's policies, frankly, better cases for Donald Trump's policies than Donald Trump makes for his own policies. He's better at explaining the policies and also explaining the shortcomings of Kamala Harris and Joe Biden than Donald Trump is, because Trump talks so much in generalities. So that was a huge win going back to that week 2 of this 4-week stretch. Last week, what happened? Kamala Harris went on a media blitz. It did not go well for her because she's just not all that good at media. She did interviews with Howard Stern, friendly interviews, of course. Did interviews on The View. And what was the other one? Oh, the other big one was the Call Her Daddy podcast, which is a podcast done by a young female named Alex Cooper, geared towards young women. And it was just, It was all about abortion. And if that's your thing, so be it. But it was not something that really worked across the aisle or certainly worked with swing voters in that demographic. Once again, because if you're going to vote for that issue and based on that issue, well, you were already going to run out there and vote for Kamala Harris anyway, right? But the worst thing that happened last week was this.
Well, if anything, would you have done something differently than President Biden during the past 4 years?
There is not a thing that comes to mind in terms of, and I've been a part of most of the decisions that have had impact.
Woo!
Such a cute soundbite.
That to me right there was game, set, match. And that became an advertisement for the Trump campaign. The person who talks about turning the page, the person who insists, you vote for me, I'm not Joe Biden, then says in a softball interview with The View where she let her guard down, nothing comes to mind that I would do differently the last 4 years. No, how is that even possible? How do you possibly say, how are you not prepared for that? How do you not have something in the can for a question like that? It's such a simple question. What would you do differently? Nothing comes to mind. Then what are we voting for here? And then there was this week where the campaign feels like it's in desperation mode. So it decides we'll go on Fox News, we'll do Bret Baier. And that obviously, as we talked a lot about yesterday, did not go well at all for Kamala Harris. And then last night, she turns down the Al Smith dinner. And there are a lot of jokes made at her expense. She gives one of the more cringeworthy 3-minute videos you're ever going to see. It is painful. We played it last hour. I can't do it to you and play it again. And if you weren't here for it, please just go find it yourself on social media because I just can't do it again. I can't. Mark and John told me I can't, and frankly, I don't want to. It's Friday. We're having a good time here. I'm not going to screw it up by playing that thing for a second time. But Trump owned that place last night, and that's a big deal. It's a big event. Every president, every presidential nominee has gone to it for decades, except for Walter Mondale in 1984. And that was the bow on a fourth straight week that if you're breaking it down like a sporting event, Donald Trump has won. And now there's 2 weeks left. Really, you've got 2 weeks from tomorrow to make a closing argument. And what's fascinating to me as well is that Barack Obama's nowhere to be found. The time for Barack Obama to start campaigning extensively for Kamala Harris was a month ago. That's when early voting started in many places. And I don't know where the guy is. I mean, he was at Ethel Kennedy's memorial service this week, but I don't know where the guy is. It's like he's like, I'm not going to attach myself to this sinking ship right now. I'm not going to do it. I don't know what other conclusion to come to when it comes to Barack Obama's absence.